Hey everyone, welcome back to Unplugged Mind. This is your favorite host, Allie. As you know, in today's episode, I will be deep diving into the social media platform Tumblr. So let's get right into it. Before beginning, I would like to place a brief trigger warning. Today's episode will discuss topics of self-harm, depression, eating disorders, and possibly more. If any of these topics are triggering or hard to listen to, feel free to skip this week's episode and come see me next time. Before beginning this project, I researched Tumblr a lot. I researched its history, its content, and the side effects on users who used Tumblr during the time that it was at its peak, which was in the early to mid 2010. Jumping into this project, I knew I wanted to look into Tumblr because of my own personal experiences. Personally, I used Tumblr during 2010s or so. I was middle school aged, and I'll tell you guys more about my personal experiences, but that definitely fueled my desire to make my podcast about Tumblr. My goal in creating this episode is to discover how Tumblr mentally affected the Gen Z users, in current day, but basically the Gen Z users who used it in 2010 and how that affected them. The first thing I want to address is the question of what exactly is Tumblr. I found an article published by Bradford in 2010. It basically just gives a rundown of Tumblr's history, and it explains that in 2007, Tumblr was launched by David Karp. It's a social media platform comparative to a middleman of Twitter and a traditional blog. In the early to mid 2000s, Tumblr was at its peak. Posts on Tumblrs are called microblogs. They range from text, quotes, photo, video, audio, and more. Tumblr separates its posts by each of these categories, which notably makes it different than other apps during this time. Users are able to view other members' posts on a place on the blog called their dashboard. It's similar to TikTok's For You page. So on their dashboard, they may heart, reblog, and comment on others' content. Tags or likes are used under users' posts, so they may be found by other users. Such as if I were to post an image of my pet cat, I would use tags such as #cat, #meow, #kitty, etc. Hashtags are going to play a very vital role into kind of the darker, more negative side of Tumblr that we're going to get into, because people found ways around hashtags and found ways to continue to use tags on their self-harm and depression content, even when the tags in correct spelling or correct grammar were being banned. They would, use a V instead of a U, or a 3 instead of an E, etc. Or, just kind of expanding the word by adding a bunch of repeating letters as a way for that hashtag to still be able to be used by people in that community without Tumblr moderators immediately recognizing that and banning the hashtag, as well as people, other users. It was harder for them to find it if they were users that would typically flag or report images or content on Tumblr that had any sort of self-harm in it. Tumblr quickly became a safe place for expression. Users could bond over shared interests, explore their sexuality, share their art, write fan fictions, and a lot more. Brittany Broski says in her podcast with Sarah Schauer, if you liked it, it was on Tumblr. This was from her episode that's actually on Tumblr, and that was posted last year in 2022. That quote I really liked. I was watching her podcast, just for a bit of inspiration and to gather any information that I might need. But that quote really stuck with me because it's so true. Tumblr is so broad, and you can find your own little communities and groups within Tumblr based on your interests. Like, there really is a little bit of everything on Tumblr, and it is such like a fan-based platform, aside from obviously the content that we're going to be talking about today, but there is a lot of fandoms and stuff like that on Tumblr. Now that we have a brief understanding of Tumblr, I want to discuss the types of content that could be found. As I stated before, it's very broad. There's fandoms, there's, the depression and self-harm, eating disorder kind of community in Tumblr, and there is just so much more. So let's talk about those. The content found on Tumblr has an exceptionally broad range. A large amount of the content is fandom-based: celebrities, movies, musical artists, fictional characters, etc. Tumblr also had a large amount of LGBTQ communities. An article from 2019 stated that nearly 2/3 of LGBTQ teens have used the internet to connect with other LGBTQ people, Tumblr being significant for such use during the 2010s. That is a large amount of people. While I was researching, I found a lot of research on like Tumblr in relation to the gay community, and I think Tumblr really played a big part in that. Somewhat because of porn. Porn and other NSFW content was and still is very prominent on users' blogs. Obviously what I want to focus on is the self-harming content, but I feel like if I'm talking about Tumblr, I can't not mention porn, briefly at least. But like I said, a lot of articles I found were, in relation to Tumblr in the gay community, as well as their porn ban that was, I think, in 2018. Tumblr got a lot of backlash after they announced that they were going to ban porn, specifically from the gay community, because they grew up, using Tumblr, and a lot of them, kind of discovered their sexuality through porn on Tumblr. So I think it's just important to note that. In 2013, BuzzFeed News published an article on a specific self-harm blog that had a large following during this time. This blog has since been removed from the site. However, as someone who religiously used Tumblr during this time, and I followed many self-harm and depression blogs, I can vividly remember this exact blog. It's so weird because, like, if you mentioned it, I wouldn't know. You know what I mean? But as soon as I read this article and, I was reading about the blog, I read the blog's name, and it kind of, they kind of like interviewed the girl. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this blog. It was so crazy to me because I had no memory of it until, reading this article. The blog is called Depression and Disorders. It was run by a girl who was 14 at the time. She would blog about her experiences with depression, suicide plans, and her own cutting. The article mentions Tumblr prohibits glorification of self-harm, eating disorders, cutting, and suicide. It makes exceptions for sites that offer support for people suffering, but it is often hard to tell which side of the rules the blog falls on. Enforcement is lax. This is a lot. I want to unpack that a little bit. So it says Tumblr prohibits glorification of self-harm, eating disorders, etc., suicide, etc. Which I don't believe. I don't, I did not see that then, and I do not see that now on Tumblr. It's very, very prevalent, and it's an issue, and that's the whole point of me making this podcast. And then it says it makes exceptions for sites that offer support. Support is a very loose term, in my opinion. You can post things that are negative or triggering, but then your caption is quote unquote supportive. So would Tumblr not ban that? I don't understand this fully. Um, and like the article says, it's hard to tell which side of the rules the blog falls on, and enforcement is lax. And that is very well seen. And it was very well seen during the 2010s when I was actively using Tumblr. I found another research article and it analyzed the images of self-harm shared on blogs. Of almost 300 images sampled, only 28 included trigger warnings by hashtag trigger warning or hashtag TW. This article was published in 2016 by Secco et al. So I recently actually went back on Tumblr a few weeks ago, and the same content that was prevalent is also prevalent now. However, I did see more trigger warnings than I remember in the 2010s. They would use hashtag TW or hashtag trigger warning. Sometimes hashtag trigger warning followed by the words like self-harm or eating disorder, stuff like that. Which, I don't know. I feel like if you are looking for something on Tumblr, you're going to find it. And it's not that hard if you know the right places to look. And I feel like with these blogs that do post that stuff, the only people that are really looking at their blogs are people who are seeking to find those sort of images and stuff, or who are a part of that kind of community or post those images themselves as well. But I did notice, and I don't recall this being a thing when I used Tumblr in the past, so I don't know if it's new or it's just something I never noticed or I don't recall because it's been years since I've been actively on Tumblr. But people who post images of self-harm or like eating disorder content, they would put like their caption, and then inside of their caption they would put like emoji enter, emoji enter, emoji enter, etc., and just put like 20 emojis. So in order to see the photos that they're uploading of them cutting or, you know, blood, gore, or eating disorder content, in order to see that, you have to hit see more. And then you would be able to see the images. Which is good, I guess. I mean, I don't think that content should be on the internet and easily accessible at all. But it is good that, you know, you kind of have to click and, you know, find the right hashtags and find the right things. So, I mean, they're putting trigger warnings, they're putting long captions, so you have to hit see more in order to see those inappropriate images and stuff like that. So that's good, I suppose. Obviously, best case scenario would be that not being on the internet at all, but that is kind of what I experienced when I went back onto Tumblr. So what happened to Gen Z users who used Tumblr during the 2010s, like myself? So I didn't find much quantitative research on the emotional effects of Tumblr users who viewed such content. However, though, I did find an article by Jones et al., who in 2022 polled 29 participants to answer mostly Likert scale questions about their experiences on Tumblr as someone with an eating disorder and whether or not the triggering content found on blogs was helpful. It was then concluded that participants overall indicated that the community had many helpful aspects and made them feel better about recovery. However, the presence of triggering content and competition in particular were notable drawbacks of the community. I can understand that where it states that the presence of triggering content and competition were drawbacks. I agree with that. But when it says that it was concluded that participants indicated the community had helpful aspects and made them feel better about recovery, I feel like that's iffy. there are, communities that are pro recovery, but there are also communities that are pro self harm and pro cutting, pro eating disorder, and stuff like that. I vividly remember when I was on Tumblr, there was like, you could look up hashtags like hashtag pro anemia. So, like hashtag pro anorexia and stuff like that. And it's so hard to distinguish the difference between support and like romanticization or glorification of these self-harming behaviors. I found another article from 2021. They looked at the effects of using Instagram and determined the analysis revealed that there is a correlation between Instagram use and depression. The reason I wanted to bring this article up is because Instagram is similar to Tumblr in the sense that they both supply photo, video, and like text options for users to upload. So therefore, I felt like it was important to look at Instagram to fill some gaps found when researching the mental effects of Tumblr. And I also do feel that like Instagram, for a much more brief period of time, was very similar to Tumblr during the 2010s. I remember finding the same kind of content on Instagram that I could find on Tumblr. I think I might have honestly found that sort of content on Instagram before I did Tumblr. I'm not really sure. It's been a long time, but Instagram now has a much better filtering process, and such content is not significant as it is on Tumblr and as it was on Tumblr. So kudos to Instagram. They're doing a good job at filtering that stuff out and not letting anything like that slide. However, though, I feel like it may be coming again because I have noticed recently on Instagram, at least for me, on my timeline, like I have noticed, them being a little bit more lax about like nudity and stuff like that. A lot of meme pages I used to follow on Instagram have now kind of become like hot half naked girl accounts. And I definitely think Instagram is moving towards a little bit of a free the nipple movement. So I don't know if maybe, Instagram is gonna kind of slow down with its monitoring. Or maybe there is like self-harm, anorexia content on Tumblr or on Instagram that I'm just not aware of. But I have not seen it. In a third article I discovered, they surveyed users who are in the depression communities on Tumblr, and the researchers concluded that participants in both groups felt anonymity and supportiveness by being a part of such communities on Tumblr. This was an article from Keller et al. From 2018. In my personal experience, Tumblr has generated some negative mental trauma. I started using Tumblr when I was 10 or 11, probably closer to 11. And like at that point in my life, I had like a lot going on. I was moving out of state and just lost my grandfather. So I kind of started experiencing like my first early symptoms of like depression and anxiety. And I was like very heavily active on Tumblr during like my 6th and 7th grade year at my new middle school. I would post and reblog a lot of depression, self-harm content, like sad quotes and stuff like that, depressing gifs and stuff like that. Music kind of played a big part in that as well. I feel like I discovered a lot of artists on Tumblr who did produce kind of like more sad music and stuff like that. Um, and I feel like now at 20 years old, I've learned a lot about myself and about my past experiences. I'm in a much better place mentally, which I'm very proud to say. Um, but I want to say in like a non-controversial way that Tumblr definitely kind of negatively impacted my battle with mental health for sure. I feel like were I not to be on Tumblr, I wouldn't have experienced or did some of the things that happened. Overall, it seems my claims may not be supported by research, but this does not change my claim or idea of Tumblr being a negative place for teens and young adults. My first-hand experiences have fueled this passion and idea for this topic. My goal in conducting and presenting this research to you all was in hopes of spreading awareness. If you guys were not aware of this side of Tumblr, I hope you guys learned something. Or if you were, I hope, maybe you could take something away from it. Maybe I provided you with some relatableness. Whatever it is, I just want to spread awareness and I want to help others. Tumblr may be a great place for communities of acceptance and mutual interests. However, there are communities with not so great environments like we talked about. I do want to let you guys know of some resources, whether they're local, if you live in my area or you're listening from my class, because I feel like it wouldn't be right for me to talk about such a topic and how I want to spread awareness without letting you guys know of some important resources that you could use if you are struggling with mental health. I'm going to put all of these up on screen so you guys can see, and I'm going to have phone numbers and stuff like that. But the first one I want to talk about is Open Doors Counseling Centers. They have 3 locations local to us: Daytona, Port Orange, and Ormond. They offer like a sliding scale rate, so it's affordable for all incomes because it is income based. The sliding scale works based on your income is how much you'll pay. Everyone pays the same percentage of their income for their therapy or counseling sessions. The price range based on income is from like $20 to $150 or something like that. But a lot of people that visit there, as I've been told, kind of range from the $20 to $50 range. So it's a more affordable way to get therapy. And these are all licensed therapists and everything like that. Also, obviously, I'm sure everyone knows, but the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, you can reach them by dialing 988. I feel like they are great for emergency situations, or, if you're someone who doesn't go to therapy but just needs someone to talk to like ASAP, or, you don't have money to go to therapy but you want to talk to someone. And again, like I said, for emergencies as well. There are also mobile apps like Ginger and BetterHelp. I've never used BetterHelp, but I'm sure everyone hears it all the time on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. I know I do. I've heard good things about BetterHelp. Ginger, though, is very similar, and that's what I have personally used. I've been to therapy, like traditional therapy, and doing Ginger, and having like virtual therapy sessions, I think was much more beneficial for me. It's a lot easier to talk to. You don't have to get out of bed either. But I feel like it's a lot easier to be more open and transparent when you're not actually in front of someone. It kind of lessens that anxiety a little bit. And also, again, for my classmates, Daytona State College has a counseling and services office on campus. I have never personally been, but if you're on campus and you're having a rough time, or you just want some advice, you're struggling with finals, whatever it is, you can go visit them. I also highly recommend Ben Graydon and Frank Gunshannon. They are my personal therapists at Daytona State campus, And I'm sure a lot of you quant students can also vouch for that. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you enjoyed or learned something or took something away from this week's episode. And make sure you tune in next week. Bye.